Welcome to the White Rabbit podcast. I'm the White Rabbit. It is Friday, the 12th of January, 2024. And I guess in some regards, as many are terming it, this is an emergency broadcast. These are dire times that we're living in. And I'm quite impressed with humanity because these people doing this to us globally have been plotting this for half a century. That's very evident. They've been plotting it with technology. They've been plotting it biologically. They've been plotting it politically. Politically, this entire, what I term genocide, has been led by those in politics who, whether they were elected duly or not, stand in front of us and smile. And my instincts always told me, I always had a sixth sense that something else, something very dark was going on. Now, for that reason, I didn't follow politics. I didn't get involved in politics for a very long time. And then when I was living in California, I dipped my toe into politics, doing just little reports from the West Coast of the USA for an Australian radio station. And that's when I started to know and see a lot of this strange behavior, and I got more interested in it. Now, this podcast is going to be called One by One, and that is, I guess, by way of homage to Rik Mayall, who tried to warn us personally with messages like, all I can tell you is throw away your TV sets now. And also his movie One by One, which eerily laid out a genocide very similar to this one. Now, though they've been planning this for a long time, and there were individuals potentially like Rik Mayall who got wind of it, let's use that kind of language, got wind of it somehow. Despite all their plotting and planning over half a century, it has taken us less than 3 or 4 years to work out, to smell a rat, to understand that something is very, very wrong. Sure, there are lots of us that would have preferred if you'd all worked this out in 2020, 2021 and not 2024. But a lot of people are starting to wake up, and that is something, I guess, we have to be grateful for small mercies. But what's going to happen is it's going to be very much like a mugging or some kind of rape or attack. We've already experienced needle rape, something entering the body that you don't want there. But we're going to get rushed. We're going to be focused on other stuff like Jeffrey Epstein and taxes and inflation and supply chains for food. And they're going to rush us around May, possibly before, with this World Health Organization treaty, which, if you listen to the language being used by doctors and members of the European Parliament, is just a way to use the English language to legalize genocide. That's what we're looking at, to take away your human rights. They don't want you to have your human rights. Now, we are already living through the early stages of this genocide, sort of an undercoat. COVID was the undercoat for genocide. And yeah, if you think that this is the genocide and we're through the other side and things are going to get back to normal, and they're not going to come to you with genocide 2, genocide 3, genocide 4, genocide 5, and just keep coming until one by one we're all gone, then I'm sorry, you're deluding yourself. Very sad news that Sven-Göran Eriksson, the former manager of the England football team, has announced today that he is dying of an incurable cancer. I guess this is what many of us were warning against. We have people with turbo cancers in our family and blood clots and low platelets, and I've talked about all this stuff before, and I won't go into it again. But what's going on with the World Health Organization is absolutely terrifying. Now, it also ties in with something else that's happening at the same time in China. Good old China. They seem best mates with Joe Biden now, don't they, with the good old US of A? How does that work exactly, that the world's purported, announced, self-declared #1 democracy, the leaders of the free world, are best mates and cozying up with a dictatorship run by a dictator who keeps slaves and is guilty of human rights abuses, not only buddies up, but does lots of business. And Joe Biden and his son Hunter have received enormous amounts of money from China during this genocide/scamdemic period. But no harm, no foul. No one's asking any questions. We just want to know if Joe's going to run again in 2024. What? So I hope by now there are those of you watching who realize that America and China work together to engineer the pandemic and engineer COVID-19. The lab in Wuhan, gain of function research, Anthony Fauci, the NIH, which is the National Institute of Health in America, working with biological weapons scientists in a lab in China. Does that not ring any alarm bells for anyone? I just heard the tragic news that a friend of a friend who was a serving Victorian police officer and who unfortunately took this juice, this bioweapon, to keep his job, committed suicide this morning. Now, I don't know how I would be coping if I knew that I'd been a victim of an attack, and that as an individual, most people assume there's nothing I can do about it. Now, I want to share something with you, so I'm going to have to do this share screen thing again, which I'm really completely hopeless at. Let's hope that works. Oh, Hunter Biden. Wasn't expecting that one. Okay. So this is a document about some research that's being done in China currently. This is new research, and what this research is doing is taking viruses, engineered viruses with gain of function, which have been living inside creatures called pangolins. Does that sound familiar? And turning it into a very nasty virus. Now, what they're also doing with this very nasty virus, which, you know, were we living in the world we believed we had in 2018, 2019, this would be considered an engineered bioweapon. Joe Biden's fine with it. He's best friends with Xi Jinping. This is a new one. This is a different one. And what they've done is they've spliced genes. Does that sound familiar? They've spliced genes with humans and mice. So it's a mouse that has a human gene, meaning it can have the ACE2 receptor, which is basically what they want to test this bioweapon on against us, but using mice. So they put our ACE2 receptor in the mouse. And they jizz up this pangolin virus and they injected it into all these mice that were spliced with humans and carried our ACE2 receptor, and 100% of the mice died. Does that sound familiar? And they're going ahead with it. They're going ahead with what they've discovered from that research. Does that sound to you like we have anything worrying to think about in the future? It certainly sounds like that to me. If you don't believe that you have anything to worry about in the future, what on earth do you think is going on in the sky with the chemtrails? Because you may not know, but over the last 3 or 4 years, thanks to this dimming of the planet, and there's a documentary called The Dimming, and if you ever share it, you can go and watch it if you can find it on YouTube or Rumble. But you can watch it. Sure, you can know about it. Sure, you can text it to your friends and send it on Messenger, and I advise that you do. But if you share it on Facebook or share it on any other social media, you'll probably lose your account. So good luck with that one. That should tell you there's an awful lot of truth in it. So it's an actual fact that their measures, their chemtrailing geoengineering measures, have already blocked out 20% of the sun. We have 20% less sun than we had before they started doing this. So, as we're called a conspiracy theory podcast, let's look at some facts. Fact number one, we have 20% less sun thanks to chemtrailing than we had just 5 years ago. Fact number two, sunlight creates in humans vitamin D. What does vitamin D do? Well, it's the number one thing you need to fight off COVID-19, whatever COVID-19 is. I don't think it's a little virus. If it is, where did it come from? Vitamin D also helps strengthen your immune system. These are all facts. These are not conspiracy theories. And so sunlight isn't carbon, not like the carbon you see guffing out of Puffing Billy as the steam train goes through the mountains full of coal. That filth nearly choked me to death yesterday. The planet isn't even heating up. There's no proof it's heating up. In fact, there's more evidence, factual evidence, that we're in a cooling period. If that's the case, if we're in a cooling period and the sun doesn't create carbon, the sun only creates good things like vitamin D in humans and photosynthesis in plants, which is food for plants. What's their reason exactly for dimming the sun? Is it to remove vitamin D from us? Is it to stop plants photosynthesizing so that plant life on Earth dies? Home crops are smaller, farming crops are failing. All actions being taken here in the name of environmentalism are 100% detrimental to human health. Let's put human health first, even though I think currently there are a lot of people that make me feel we're a monstrous species. We are a monstrous species, that there are those within our species that would do this to us, that would even contemplate wiping us out like this. And I can't believe I'm sitting here talking about it. Of course, I sound like a conspiracy theorist. And I'm sure there are people out there saying, oh, well, they can do what they like. If they come knocking at my door, I'm gonna sort them out. They won't be knocking at your door. It's in the water. It's in the food. It's in the air you breathe. It's microwave radiation all around you. Every time you pick up your smartphone, I do the same. We live the same lives. They won't need to send soldiers to your door, not until they send the robots and drones to pick up the bodies. That's what we're looking at. So you're telling me that the best and the brightest, because that's what these people consider themselves to be, the best and the brightest that we've got in the human species. And of course, they consider, don't they, these parasites, that because they're the richest, they're the best and the brightest. I don't agree with that. We've seen the best and the brightest emerge during this scamdemic. And I'm quoting someone else, and I can't even remember his name, and I'm embarrassed to say it. I think he was on Tucker Carlson. But there was a journalist, I think, a writer. And I think he was working for an American university, and he lost his job because he wouldn't jab. And he said, you know, these people have made the biggest mistake of their entire plot. Because what you've done is you've created a team of the best. The most intellectual, the smartest, those with the best instincts, those with the most bravery, those who have any capacity to convey a message, and you've put them all on one team. It's like a super soccer team, right? A super team. You've got all the best, all the brightest, all the most determined. Why wouldn't we be the most determined? I want to live as much as the next people, and I, more importantly, want my children to live. That's why we're fighting. But my God, they are trying to come for us. You see, we're already in multiple wars, not just the wars you hear Joe Biden talk about. Multiple wars. Well, we're already in a civil war, aren't we? What's a civil war? Why are we in a civil war? Well, I think it's fair to say that our governments are moving against the people with some amount of stealth. That's why I call the World Health Organization the World Stealth Organization, quite happily, because they are moving against us in a stealthy manner, telling us it's for woke agendas, telling us it's for our health, telling us it's to protect us, telling us it's because we're going green. It was very clever the way they bastardized and continue to bastardize the English language in order to lawfully justify the coming genocide. And all of these people that are on board with it, that have a modicum of power, whether it be state premiers, prime ministers that come and go in the UK, you've been through so many presidents, senators, congressmen. I don't know if they've been given a hall pass and they get to survive. Some will, some won't. Depends if they were on board with the agenda or not. I would hazard a guess, if you're one of those who's been told you and your family will be okay, you're kidding yourselves. There is no honor among thieves. None. Health, we're looking at bioterrorism attacks via what they call vaccines, and we know to be biological attack by injection. Again, China is going for it a second time. I just showed you the paperwork on it. These people have no shame. You know, when people commit genocide and you don't hang them, they're going to keep doing it, right? The reason they're still doing it is because we didn't do that. We didn't hold any of them to account. No. You see, in the old days of pitchforks, these people would have been dragged out of Parliament, dragged out of their homes, kicking and screaming, and they would have been held to account. They would have been locked up. The public would have taken matters into their own hands, and they wouldn't be physically able to do any more evil. That's why people like Zuckerberg, who has done much evil for mankind with his social network. Oh, sounds so innocent, doesn't it? Like Operation Paperclip. That's why Bill Gates, who wants to shift the mortality figures with his healthcare measures, the computer salesman. The only problem is he didn't tell us in which direction he wanted to shift those mortality figures, and your friendly governments didn't tell you either. Psychological attacks, predominantly on the younger generation, our children and grandchildren. Thanks for that. Nothing irks me more. Psychological attacks with their woke agendas, their trans agendas, wanting children to chop off their own genitals. Their own genitals. Financial. Look, inflation, food pricing, supply chain issues. That's all the flick of a switch. That's all deliberate. And you know it's fake because house prices are staying high. They're making sure that property prices are staying high because they don't want you to buy any. So even if there are those among you who are pandemic, scamdemic resistant financially, you or your business, your job, your chosen career, they're making sure nothing's easier for you because it's harder for everyone else. It's only easier for them. They're getting rich because when Bill Gates wrote his book about pandemic preparedness, it was literally the playbook for the pandemic. And there are now people stating clearly he couldn't have known. He couldn't have known about that unless he was the engineer of the pandemic. There's another way that I can prove to you that the whole financial thing is fake, is that just quietly and on the side, I'm dipping my toe in, and I like a bit of antiques trading. I'm obsessed with antiques, the beauty of antiques. It's not a financial thing for me. I choose them as gifts. I buy them for pleasure. I have difficulty selling them on because I love them so much in my home. But the price of antiques that are so valuable, it's our history, are low. They're down. If you want some antiques, now's the time to go and get them. So why are the price of antiques so low and you can just grab these amazing things, but the price of food is so high? It's extortionate to feed your family. It doesn't make any sense to me because an inflation is across the board. And of course, treaties by what we now know to be unelected mass murderers, genocidal maniacs, right? Honestly, I sit here being as professional as I can, but often I feel like screaming into this camera and this microphone for you guys to wake up and share the shit out of these clips. It doesn't have to be mine. There are plenty going around. There's one pinned at the top of my Facebook page, which miraculously is still in my name, Nicola Charles, which says emergency broadcast on it. I think COVID was the primer, you know, the gray paint primer or whatever primer you use before you paint your house, your roof, your car, whatever. That was just the primer, because the real genocides are coming. And Bill Gates did say, didn't he, you won't miss pandemic 2. We're already seeing a pandemic of cancers, a pandemic of sudden deaths, a pandemic of blood clots, a pandemic of miscarriage. Someone sent me, a doctor actually, an awful clip confirming photographically that when you get an abortion, a termination, and I'm sorry, ladies watching this, if you've had one, that they start digging things out of that fetus while it's still alive, like heart and lungs and kidney and all that, while it's still alive at 12 weeks and up, to go off for experimental testing. They're doing it in the palm of someone's hand. It's so tiny. Like I said, we are a monstrous species. Do you understand? Until we're on board that all this nicey, cushy world that they've allowed us to fall into over the last century, half a century in particular, because they wanted us to build the infrastructure. Oh, they want all that. They want all the old buildings and everything still around. Although I don't know how they're going to explain that to the next generations. They'll probably take credit for it all. But they're going to continue plotting and continue coming after us unless we stop them. Now, I also learned something this week, which has absolutely horrified me. And of course, it's related to health, about Australia. Parents, listen up. And you need to warn all other parents in Australia, and actually warn your teenagers as well, that it is policy in Australia. You know, when you have your Medicare card. So in Australia, you have a Medicare card. You go to the doctors, you use your Medicare card. And I guess it sort of says, you know, I've already paid taxes and I can go and see the doctor and not get charged. I'm assuming that's what a Medicare card is. Government healthcare. Everyone has one. You have to have one. And on it, you've got your name, your husband's name, and your children's names. And you're all a different number, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And they take the details when you go to the GP. Now, even though you cannot get your own, as a child growing up, you cannot get your own Medicare card until you're 18. Of course, when you're 18, you become an adult. You can do all kinds of things. Get a mortgage, all that stuff, get married. However, even though you stay on your parents, in Australia, your parents' Medicare card until you're 18, at the age of 14 in Australia, 14 in Australia, that child's Medicare, in other words, the details of their medical history, their procedures, their vaccinations from the age of 14 are detached from the parents on your MyGov account, your Medicare account. You may not have noticed. Putting our adolescents, our teenagers in harm's way between the age of 14 and 18. So many things ran through my head as to why that might be. They don't want parents to know what vaccines the older teenagers have got at school. They don't want the parents to know if the girls have had termination or terminations during the age of 14 and 18. But also, of course, in the new world, they might not want parents to know that you're taking puberty blockers or you're going through transition surgery or considering it, seeing a psychologist discussing it. I'll say again, from 14 years and up in Australia, between 14 and 18, when to all intents and purposes to the parents, the child, your child, my child is still a child, their medical history and details of anything they're doing medically is hidden from the parent unless the child, contacted by Medicare at the parent's request, gives permission for the parent to know. Because between 14 and 18, there wouldn't be anything that a teenager wouldn't want a parent to know, right? Just a heads up to Aussie parents. Another factoid for you. Did you know that the British medical establishment is now classifying heart attacks, strokes, blood clots, and cancers, including turbo cancers, as death by natural causes? They say because, well, it's always something that's going to kill you. It's just a matter of when. Non-natural causes are listed as car accident, falling down the stairs, falling off a cliff, drowning. They're not things that were always going to kill you, so they're not natural causes. So heart attack, stroke, blood clot, and cancers are now listed by the British Medical Association as natural causes. They're also listed as mRNA COVID-19 injection side effects. But hey, if you can write on a death certificate that someone died of natural causes, I guess that lets a whole bunch of people off the hook. They're never, ever going to take responsibility for this genocide. Not one iota of responsibility. Zero. Because that's the plan. It didn't happen. You look over there while we kill you over there. It's literally like an illusionist on a stage, a magic trick. It's a distraction trick. You know, Yuval Harari, who is the nasty little pet of Klaus Schwab, he's his scientific and technology advisor. He seems very young. Seems very close to Klaus, personally. I saw a clip yesterday where he said, when the flood comes, the elites will make an ark for the elites, and they will allow the citizens to drown. When the flood comes, the elites will make an ark for the elites and let the citizens drown. This is the man, apparently our governments are putting a lot of stock in his advice. Now, you may also be noticing at this time of year, not that it's particularly important, but it does have a relevance, that the Hollywood movie Oppenheimer is raking it in at all the awards shows. I haven't seen it, just clips. I'm sure the performances were amazing. It's a very interesting subject matter, but I doubt very much that they got into the real nitty-gritty of Oppenheimer. Oppenheimer said about the creation of the atom bomb, with this, we have become gods. I don't agree. A lot of the people doing this to us now believe they're gods, undeniably believe they're gods. And they're shills, those in our governments, banking, and our corporate structures shilling for them, believe they are kneeling before gods. Of course, if you can change the weather, flood a country, cause earthquakes in a country, we'll get onto that in a moment. You would consider these people gods, but gods for me inhabit a special place in people's hearts for very different reasons, usually for encouraging goodness. People who create bombs, digital IDs, slave systems, biological terrorism, biological weapons, you are merely scum. You are sad, impotent little men, little psychopaths who are never going to be happy, for whom nothing is ever enough. These people have everything, but it's not enough, is it? I don't think they deserve the admiration of a god. I think they deserve our pity, and I think they should be removed from society for the things that they believe and the things that they say. Now I'm going to share screen with you, and I'm going to show you a couple of terrifying things that very much affect Australia, but I'm not going to do it until I get the right thing up here on the screen. I'm not very good at this share screen, and I don't really want you guys to have to look at another picture of Hunter Biden. So I want to talk to you briefly, as promised, about the CERN-Hadron Collider. It's looking like it's not going to let me go to that link. That's interesting, isn't it? Perhaps it knows. Oh, that's the wrong one anyway. That's the Melbourne one. Okay. Let's have a look at the details. Let's see if the website will allow me to explain to you what this is. We seem to be getting through. My studio, by the way, is ways down the end of my house. I'm going to have to accept all the settings, which is extremely dangerous. You can look at this for yourself. So this is the website for the CERN-Hadron Collider. I find this absolutely terrifying, and I'll explain why in a minute. A lot of people, including my husband, didn't even know that this existed. Your tax dollars, our tax dollars, are paying for these all over the world. They used to believe that there was just one in Switzerland, but now they're popping up in other countries. The Large Hadron Collider is the world's largest and most powerful particle accelerator. It first started up on the 10th of September 2008 and remains the largest addition to CERN's accelerator complex. The Large Hadron Collider consists of a 27-kilometer ring of superconducting magnets with a number of accelerating structures to boost the energy of the particles along the way. Inside the accelerator, two high-energy particle beams travel at close to the speed of light before they're made to collide. The beams travel in opposite directions in separate pipes, two tubes kept at ultra-high vacuum. They are guided around the accelerator ring by a strong magnetic field maintained by superconductive electromagnetics. Now, I could go on and on about that, but I won't. It is believed that these CERN-Hadron Colliders, and in 2021, one arrived in Melbourne. Yes, I'm sorry to have to break that to you. It is apparently at the University of Melbourne. The fear is that these Hadron Colliders can actually create a black hole here on Earth, which of course could destroy Earth, destroy countries. Now that collider, that is 27 kilometers long, which was of course in Switzerland. Same place as the World Economic Forum. That's a surprise, isn't it? Well, there's soon to be a bigger one, 100 kilometers long, and that's going to be in China. Anyone else worried about China, or is that just me? Now, I watched an absolutely terrifying documentary where they were talking about the people that are doing this, believing that Satan is not a figure anymore. The way we see sort of Boba Fett sitting in the chair, you know, the demon with the children at the feet, that because he was driven out by God, that he has reemerged on Earth in the digital realm, in the digital space, as AI. Now, they believe that they can tear a hole into another dimension with their CERN-Hadron Collider. That sounds fun, doesn't it? Why wouldn't you want to do that? And they want everything satanic to spill out. I would hazard a guess at some point in 2019, they may have succeeded, because the last 4 years have been literally hell on earth. I've often asked myself, are we in hell and we just don't know it? But life never used to be like that. Life used to be wonderful. We had families and children and homes, and we watered the plants and went on holiday, and something happened, something occurred that changed all that. Now, these people also believe, people like Yuval Harari, that they want to splice humans. Just like the document I showed you from China, where they've spliced humans with mice to put the human ACE2 receptor in a mouse to see, well, you know, which pangolin diseases will kill humanity in a heartbeat. By the way, that they're developing is called the brain virus. It kills your brain. Your heart might be beating, but you'll be brain dead. So we've got that to look forward to, haven't we? Never mind screwing your lungs up with upper respiratory disease. How about a brain virus? Bit like mad cow disease, I can imagine. We'll all just be gaga and they'll come and scoop us up. And who knows, maybe we'll end up, you know, Soylent Green for something. So these people who have actually spliced humans into mice have actually now attempted gene therapy, a splice of gene therapy into humanity with the COVID-19 mRNA injections. By the way, they're nothing to do with COVID-19. What is COVID-19? It was a bioweapon. So are you asking us to use a bioweapon to fix a bioweapon? Doesn't make any sense to me. And what they want to do and what they have achieved, I guess, to some degree, and the reason most of us lost our jobs because we wouldn't take those injections, is they have spliced a lot of people with what they believe to be the new satanic future, the digital realm, AI, because they believe that Satan is now without form, that he lives in the digital space. And my God, what other proof do we have than they want us to have a digital ID? How much mayhem, trickery, fraud, crime. I mean, AI? Could AI possibly put your fingerprints at a crime scene and cause you to be locked away for 55 years? Yes. Not because AI, Satan, can go to the crime scene and plant fingerprints. No, that's much too easy. They found a way for their Satan, they believe their true God, to do this to us on Earth without physically being here. How? Well, we all get digital IDs, and then this AI program, all of them working together, the new Matrix, simply takes your fingerprints from your digital ID and places them in the little digital wallet that is evidence from a crime scene, waiting to be analyzed. Or perhaps they've already been analyzed and they just swap them out. They can decide who lives and who dies, who gets what injections and who doesn't. That, I'm afraid, is Bill Gates' promised death panels. So what does this mean? Does Satan really exist in the machine? Or is it the people controlling the machine that are satanic? They've got so far down the road with this. A CERN Hadron Collider arrived at the University of Melbourne in 2021. Did you hear about that? Did you know about that? No, because they want us running around worrying about vaccines and worrying about toilet paper. They see us as cattle. They see us as slaves. Worse. I'm against digital ID in my mind because I say we're not livestock. We're not cattle to have a barcode, a digital tag on our ear in case we go walk around and they need to be able to track us with GPS. No, it's worse than that. Worse than treating us like cattle in our 15-minute local neighborhoods, 20-minute neighborhoods in Australia, easy to get around. By the way, they're building one in Bayside. That went tits up for the wealthy, didn't it? No, it's worse than being livestock and tagged. We're not livestock to them. We're prisoners. Prisoners who've committed no crime. They want us all to exist and live in an open range prison. The open range prison we used to call our world. They want us bagged, tagged, tracked, sterilized, on a leash, fed what they want us to eat, and injected whenever they like. What does that sound like? Tagged, chipped, fed what they want to feed us, only allowed out when they say, put on a leash and sterilized. Well, gee, that sounds like 98% of the dogs worldwide, the pets. That's what they want for us. Not only is that what they want for us, that is what they're doing to us. And if the World Health Organization treaty, which is already announced to be supported by Australia, goes through in May 2024, their health advice stops being a recommendation. And let's face it, during COVID, but a recommendation, they came down on us pretty hard, and starts to be an edict, which means it's law. It's a treaty. You have to do it. We are in the middle of a civil war against us by our governments. They are killing us one by one, just as Rick Mail predicted, because people who reach that level often get a whiff of what's going on. They often get told, protect yourself, don't worry about what's coming. Who knows? Perhaps he had a fan in the New World Order. We've got between now and May to get rid of the people who are prepared to kill us, to either get rich or continue to gaze the praise of these globalists. Is it globalists or is it Satanists? You decide. This has been the White Rabbit. I'm the White Rabbit. Hopefully, I'll see you next time.